my fellow Americans. It is with great regret that I must speak with you today. Our republic is lost and must now be rebuilt. How did this happen? Well, good old Curly, from the movie City Slickers, liked to always talk about the one thing. In trying to figure out why our country is so far off the right track, I thought to identify the one thing. Something we could fix. Could there really be one thing? Believe it or not, there is. You hear people all the time saying, Washington is broken. Well, yes it is, and we are the ones who broke it. By 1913, in the midst of the progressive movement, we were convinced that the Founding Fathers didn't have it quite right, that, because of corruption at the state level, we needed to tinker with the fundamental structure and balance of powers laid out in our Constitution. Boy, did we have it wrong, and eventually get it way wrong. Our country had a cold, we prescribed the wrong medicine. Now it has pneumonia and is in critical condition. So, what is the one thing? The 17th Amendment to the Constitution. This single amendment, which changed the way our United States senators are elected, from being chosen by each state's legislature to being popularly elected by the people of each state. This has been the biggest mistake our country has ever made in terms of undermining the limits of power that the federal government was granted by the states and by the people. Yes, even more damaging than the Federal Reserve, which was created at the same time by the same progressives. 1913 and President Woodrow Wilson were very bad news for our republic. It is really necessary to understand the original hierarchy of power in our country to fully appreciate the effect this amendment has had. The highest power was our Creator. Then, the people. Then, the individual states. Last on the list was the federal government. With rights granted by our Creator, the people authorized the states to create the federal government, granting to it only the specific, limited powers outlined in the Constitution, and reserving back all other powers to the states and to the people. Fearful, and rightfully so, of a creeping, overreaching, and all-powerful central government, our founders wisely placed a system of checks and balances to ensure against this. We most commonly refer to these as the three co-equal branches of government. These are the executive branch, or presidency, legislative branch, or Congress, and the judicial branch, Supreme Court. Only one of these, the legislative branch, was intentionally made up of two separate bodies, the House of Representatives and the Senate, both of which must agree before they can pass any laws. The House of Representatives is made up of representatives who are elected based on districts created in each state. These districts are based on population. Therefore, each representative is representing a similar amount of people within their respective districts. The more people in a state, the more representatives that state has. However, the representatives do not represent the state, they represent the people. This is why the House of Representatives is known as the People's House. In the previous hierarchy, after the people comes the state. Therefore, to represent the interest, rights, authorities, and yes, the sovereignty of the individual states, the Senate was created. Each state was given an equal number of representatives, 2 United States senators. The senators were to be chosen by each of the states' legislatures. This was to ensure their agency to the state. Madison, in Federalist No. 62, wrote, "The appointment of senators by state legislatures gives to state governments such an agency in the formation of the federal government as must secure the authority of the former." Moreover, said Madison, the mere enumeration of federal powers in the Constitution would never be sufficient to restrain the tyrannical proclivities of the central state and were mere parchment barriers to tyranny. Structural arrangements, such as the appointment of senators by state legislatures, were absolutely critical and necessary. Alexander Hamilton said, "The election of senators by state legislatures would be an absolute safeguard against federal tyranny." George Mason believed that the appointment of senators by state legislatures would give the citizens of the states some means of defending themselves against encroachments of the national government. Does any of this ring a bell in your head? Senators were never intended to be popularly elected by the people. Otherwise, they would have simply created one body for the people, or 2 houses of representatives, which is what we appear to have now. This fundamental change, more than anything, is why we find ourselves here today. We ask, why does the federal government disregard the authority and rights of the states? Simple, it's because no one in Washington, D.C. represents the states. That is exactly what was intended by the progressives of the early 1900s. The argument was made that we needed to bring democracy to the Senate and remove the corrupt influences of the state legislatures. Smoke and mirrors, my friends. A complete load of crap. They knew full well that, over time, this seemingly simple and democratic change would lead to the complete shifting of power from the states entirely to the federal government. The result is that, in less than 100 years, our founders would not even recognize the government they created. I take that back. They would recognize it. They would recognize it for the tyrannical central government they fought so hard to protect us from and hoped would never happen. Well, we have let it happen. Consequently, today, we have a new hierarchy of power. It is now, first, the federal government, then the states, because the states have basically become an extension of the federal government, then the people. We have come full circle. Instead of a king, we now have an all-powerful and all-knowing central government. Our supposedly sovereign states are now more like local governments, implementing the dictates of the master federal government, and we, the people, are looked at as ignorant subjects who do not know what is best for us, and, therefore, must be controlled for our own good and for the good of the collective. We must forfeit our individual rights for the good of society as a whole. What crap! Our founding fathers are rolling over in their graves. We must fight with every bone in our bodies to reverse this course. You want to get rid of the special interests, big money, and corrupt party bosses influencing our Congress? Then remove them from the process at the federal level entirely by removing them from the process of selecting our United States senators. By the way, me not including the Creator in our new hierarchy was not an oversight on my part. In order for the federal government to impose 100% control over the people, there can be no Creator. There's one last point to be made on this subject, and it is not to be taken lightly. The United States Senate is the body in which all treaties and foreign agreements must be ratified or denied. Treaties, we are told, take precedence over the Constitution. So if you care about the sovereignty of our states, you should be much more concerned about the sovereignty of our country, for it is in the United States Senate where it will be defended or forfeited. And make no mistake about it, my fellow Americans, this is the ultimate goal of the world government progressives, who see United States sovereignty as their barrier to global government. This is the fight you are in. The Progressives Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the federal government of America and to the democracy for which it stands, one nation, of this world, indefensible, with healthcare and social justice for all. Let us stop the madness. Repeal the 17th Amendment to the Constitution while we still have a Constitution to repeal it from. Please share this video with as many people as possible. Thank you again, and may God bless the United States of America.